Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me for the latest edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cooke, and we're going into the woods for this week's episode. A little later on, you'll meet a man from Scotland who's walking across Canada to raise awareness of clear cutting and reforestation in the Scottish Highlands. He passed through Cape Breton last week, and we'll catch up with Michael Yellowlees in just a few moments. We'll also have a special report about a part of Evanston that's been surrounded by forest for quite a while, the West Richmond Education Centre building, also known in the past as Walter Fougere School. Could the building be used for affordable housing or physician recruitment purposes? We'll see what municipal councillors, the warden, the CAO, and other members of Richmond County staff have to say about it in just a couple of minutes' time. But first, it's off to L'Arche Cape Breton in Iron Mines, Inverness County. Nova Scotia's official tree for Boston came down at the L'Arche property just last week. I was there and we caught up with several community residents and special guests as the tree made its way to the ground and then made its way to New England. Let's go to L'Arche Cape Breton's Inverness County property right now for all the fun. The old saying goes, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, no matter how many people are there to hear it when Nova Scotia's tree for Boston comes down, there are always familiar sounds, like this one. In more recent years, we've been hearing this sound. With this year's tree cutting ceremony in Inverness County, we shouldn't be surprised to hear this sound. And because this year's tree cutting ceremonies took place at L'Arche Cape Breton's property in Iron Mines, just outside of Orangedale in Cape Breton, we also heard the sound of the joy and enthusiasm of the L'Arche residents.
Thank you, and three things: friendship, smile, and an open heart. Thank you.
I don't know if there's anything more I can add to that. Three values that are important to L'Arche, and three reasons why this Tree for Boston connects deeply to L'Arche Cape Breton. We aspire every day, those three things that Ian just mentioned. We aspire to build friendships, relationships every day, to have open hearts, and to really try every single day, even though sometimes it's challenging, to smile whenever we meet somebody in front of us. So I think today it's really about celebration. We're gathered here today in a pandemic time. It's a miracle somehow to be here together. So it's already a celebration, but just the fact that we're able to give something back for what happened in 1917, to give something back to the generosity, the help of Boston is something to celebrate. So it's really about saying thank you.
In case you're wondering why we're saying thank you to Boston this and every year, here's the host of Wednesday morning ceremony, global TV personality Elise Hand, with a refresher.
This tree behind us is 60 years old, so we've been doing this tradition for 50 years. So this tree's been around longer before we started sending trees off to Boston. Why do we do this? Why do we send a Christmas tree to Boston every year from Nova Scotia? Well, on December 6, 1917, two ships collided in the Halifax harbor, the Mont Blanc and the Emo. And that happened, and when those two ships came together, they both had metal hulls, and when you get metal on metal and they rub together, there's friction. And when friction happens, sparks happen, and sparks ignited, and they flew on board the Emo, which is a French ammunition ship. And so there's thousands of tons of explosives on this ship, right? And so when that happened, a fire started, and you can guess what happened next, folks. Tragedy in the city of Halifax on December 6, 1917, and immediately as that blast went off, thousands of people lost their lives in Halifax, tens of thousands were injured, and it was a really devastating and terrible time, of course, for the city. The city of Boston, though, was the very first large city to come to our aid. They came and they brought us, within 12 hours of this explosion happening, things like doctors and nurses and pediatric care and medicine, food, supplies. They helped us rebuild, and we are so thankful for that. So today we are here to celebrate Boston's generosity, and that bond between Boston, Halifax, Boston, and Nova Scotia still exists today. They're our neighbors, they're a sister city, and we so appreciate what they did to get us back on our feet, so to speak, so many years ago. So each year, what we do is we send them the biggest, most beautiful Christmas tree we can possibly find in the entire province. Here it is. And we cut it down, and then it begins its journey to Boston.
But before this 48-foot white spruce makes its way to New England, a few things have to happen first of all. For starters, it gets blessed and smudged by members of Cape Breton's Mi'kmaq community. This dance group from nearby Waigama First Nation appeared in Richmond County last year for the ceremonies that took place at the Grand Dance property of Heather and Tony Sampson. They're back this year, and they're doing the smudging ceremony from 4 different directions, beginning with the east.
We turn to the east. Each day the sun rises to a new day, reminding us of our own rising to a new life. With the coming of a new day, we are given new beginnings and new opportunities to love God and each other. For your gift of new life, we praise and thank you, Creator.
Next up, the crowd hears a few words from visiting dignitaries, including 2 members of the provincial cabinet, Alan McMaster, who's also the MLA for Inverness, but first, Tory Rushton, a Cumberland County MLA who is the new Minister of Natural Resources and Renewables.
In 2018, I was very fortunate that the tree actually came from 3 houses up from my house. And this is a celebration today that you're recognizing. But for many, many years to come, you're going to follow where the tree's coming from, and it's going to be an annual celebration in this community. So this is the start of a new holiday celebration for you, if you will. And I know from colleagues and friends that have gone to Boston to the lighting, or friends that live in Boston, this is a gift they look forward to every single year. It's a celebration in part in their city, and it's something that gives them bragging rights, if you will, that shows their humanity and able to reach out and be friends.
I'm so proud that this year's tree is coming from here in Inverness County and donated by an organization that does so much in our community. Last year, the pandemic forced us to celebrate in a different way. I'm glad we're here together today. I think everybody, I'm sure you all appreciate having the chance to be here in person with each other today. I'm so pleased we can gather, and every year, Nova Scotia also sends regular-sized Christmas trees to Boston to be donated to local schools and charities. This year, the trees are donated by David and Jenny Mombercat, local Christmas tree growers who belong to the Christmas Tree Council of Nova Scotia. We thank them for their generous donation. I want to acknowledge the municipality of the County of Inverness. I see Councillor Bonnie McIsaac is here today, and also your local councillor John McLennan is here with us. I want to acknowledge them, and I know that they help provide the music that we're enjoying here today as well.
Also on hand on this November morning, as he was at last year's tree-cutting ceremony in Grand Dance, Cape Breton Council MP Mike Kellaway. The recently re-elected Liberal member actually held a Zoom meeting at L'Arche Cape Breton earlier in the morning to address members of the Atlantic Liberal Caucus, of which he's once again the chair. Kellaway says his fellow Liberal MPs are a little jealous of him being in Inverness County this morning, and he congratulates L'Arche Cape Breton on providing the feeling of community that really goes along with this special gift to New England every year.
I was very proud to showcase via Zoom as much as I could the L'Arche experience, and it's important, and the more and more people get to understand what L'Arche is about, its mandate, its purpose, what it brings to the community, what it brings in terms of economic development and social development, and just transformation of human beings. It's quite astonishing, and I'm very proud to say that it's in my riding. I've gotten to know the folks at L'Arche quite well over the past year or so, in particular the last couple of months. I can't think of a better place to have the tree come from and go to a community like Boston. If you look at the last couple of years of COVID, we've seen the importance of looking after each other, helping each other, being there for each other, and that's what this tree symbolizes. It symbolizes community. L'Arche symbolizes community. Inverness County symbolizes community. Last year I was very lucky to be in Richmond County where we took the tree and we delivered it to Boston. It's symbolic, but symbolism means a lot, and it means about community. It means about being together, working together, focusing on problems, and just being there for each other.
But even with this symbolism, a tree is still a tree. But a Christmas tree of any size or purpose isn't just any tree, it's a sizable part of Nova Scotia's economy, as we hear from the outreach manager for the Christmas Tree Council of Nova Scotia, Brittany Frenette.
The ceremonial cutting of the tree for Boston really kicks off the Christmas season for many Nova Scotians. However, those of us who work in the Nova Scotian Christmas tree industry think about Christmas all year long. There are over 300 farms here in Nova Scotia that grow Christmas trees in rural communities just like this. We are proud to work and produce Christmas trees that you put in your homes at Christmas each year. Not all Christmas trees grown in Nova Scotia stay in our province. In fact, most of them go faraway places including Central America, the Caribbean, other parts of Canada, and of course Boston in the United States. This Christmas tree and the others that we are sending today will be part of just the 1 million Christmas trees that we export from Nova Scotia this season. So on behalf of the thousands of families employed in the Christmas tree industry here in Nova Scotia, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today and being part of this special tradition. I would like to thank Green Hill Farms for their donation of the charity trees that will go along to Boston with this beautiful tree. I know all of our Christmas tree growers would have loved to have been here today to see such a spectacular crowd. Unfortunately, it's hard for them to take time away from their busiest season of the year. So maybe we can all cheer extra loud on their behalf. Enjoy the show and make sure you visit your local Choose and Cut this year to find your perfect Christmas tree. Thanks.
Who's ready to cut this tree down?
Well, we're almost ready. But first, here's a little reminder of what happens to this tree from Iron Mines, Inverness County, once it's loaded onto the truck and taken away for its journey to Boston.
From here, so on this truck bed is where you'll see the tree go later. And then the tree will make its way to Halifax. This is always tradition. We're going to actually have a ceremony in Halifax, downtown Halifax on Friday. I'll be a part of that too. Can't wait. So it actually leaves Halifax November 15th. So it's going to stick around for a little bit. We don't want to say goodbye to it just yet, but November 15th is when it will be delivered to its new home on the Boston Common. And it only takes about 3 days to get to Boston, so it's a pretty quick trip. Will this not make the most beautiful Christmas tree in the center of Boston this year, folks? Yeah, and that's what it looks like when it's all wrapped up. When the leaves come down, it's something else to see. When it's all lit up, it's going to be amazing. 30,000 people, folks, are going to gather around this tree once it's put up in the center of town in Boston and it's all lit up. So 30,000 people will attend that ceremony. So 30,000 Bostonians are going to see the tree donated by L'Arche Cape Breton. And it's also an annual tradition. If you haven't been to one of these before, I was at one of these last in Pictou County. It's a lot colder, so we're doing pretty good. What is tradition is a new tree is planted in the place of that old one. So once this goes down, a new tree planted right away. Hey, maybe that tree will be heading to Boston again in 60 years. Wouldn't that be cool?
All right, we've made you wait long enough. It's time for this white spruce to come down.
So to do the honors, we have with us one of my favorite people. This guy's fantastic. Waddy Long is back with us, and students from the Environmental Technologies program at the NSCC Strait Area Campus.
And as the tree starts making its way to the ground, it's not just the sound of saws that can be heard. There's also a faint hint of the bagpipes swirling in the distance. That's courtesy of one of the 3 musicians here for the day, Kenneth Mackenzie. He's joined by the sister act of Dawn and Margie Beaton to play the fiddle and the piano as well. And as a result, the Inverness County air that's already filled with the sounds of saws, cheers, and trucks as this white spruce hits the ground at L'Arche Cape Breton in Iron Mines also gets a Celtic air on this beautiful November morning. So, as the NSCC Strait Area Campus students and Department of Natural Resources and Renewables officials wind up their work, and the tree is packed up safely to Boston as the final few fiddle tunes fill the air, there's a sense of why this happens in the first place, perhaps best embodied by Inverness MLA Alan McMaster's multilingual greeting.
I want to wish you Merry Christmas. Nola Kriel Gaiv, Walene Pia Sudama, Joyeux Noël. Merry Christmas to everyone.
In Iron Mines, Inverness County, at L'Arche Cape Breton for Telile 24/7, I'm Adam Cooke. And now let's head to another area surrounded by forest, specifically the Evanston site of a school building that used to have classes in it, but hasn't operated since 2013 when the Strait Regional School Board shut it down. That's the former West Richmond Education Centre, also known in the past as Walter Foucher School. Over the past year, there's been a lot of interest in this building. Some groups and individuals across Richmond County and outside the county have considered that it could be a new hub for affordable housing. or it could be a key part in physician recruitment strategies for the Strait area. But how difficult is it to prepare that building for these purposes or for similar purposes? Richmond Municipal Councillors tried to figure that question out at a recent special council meeting whose key agenda items included the one-time West Richmond Education Centre. So we're going to share some footage from that council session, filmed and formatted by Telile Community Television's Becky Bourinot and Nick Boudreau. You'll get to see how a recent building assessment review of the school site is playing into the current discussions, and you'll also find out what exactly led Council to delay a further decision on the issue until December 20th at the regular Council meeting that's scheduled to take place that night. So let's go to the Richmond Municipal Chambers in Arichat right now and hear some more about what could happen to a former school building in Evanston and how we got to this point in the first place.
An assessment document basically had been circulated earlier in the month, or no, actually it's now November 1st, look at that. So in the first couple of weeks of October to councillors for review. It was a lengthy document, and I know we all wanted to take some time to go through it in a little bit more detail before having a discussion, and I think we also all felt that it warranted a special council meeting to kind of be in a position where we can talk about it together and ask questions of staff.
It's a 15 to 25 year capital plan. I guess of particular concern would be what you see coming within the next 1 to 5 years. Keep in mind some items would be required before the building could be occupied again. Others may be recommended in the near term, but maintenance, there are some things you can defer, there are others you couldn't. The 1 year or the immediate requirements that they noted were quite substantial. They noted an estimated cost of $1.65 million of year one items to be addressed, and within the first 5 years they noted an additional $650,000 for a total of $2.3 million of work identified within the near term.
This is to bring it back to basically usage for a school, so there's nothing else we can compare it to depending on what somebody wants to use it for in the future, although I guess it's unlikely it would ever be returned to a school. But a lot of this would have to be done regardless of whatever use.
The recommended replacements would provide a usable facility in terms of the current building structure. And I think for us to have had an assessment as to what it would cost to do anything different with the building, we would have had to know what that plan was in order for a consultant to be able to provide that information. And so this is very much not that type of comparison assessment. It's just it's a current building assessment.
A lot of the pieces that were discussed that needed to be done were just about bringing the building up to a condition where it could be used. Then there were other costs that were related specifically to being used as a school, but when I started to just try to pull those pieces out, it really was not material in terms of the costing. And I don't know that this is not new news. There was an assessment done previously, and it was noted that it was quite a substantial amount of money that needed to be spent to bring it back to its old luster. But I am still happy that we did take the time and the money in the budget to have it done again, because as we talked about before, depending on what we decide to do with it, particularly if we decide to declare it a surplus and put it out for tender, at least we probably would have to do something like this anyway to be able to assess bids or whatever. If anybody's asking me if I think we should spend this kind of money to bring this building back, I think that we'd have to have a really great plan in terms of what that looks like. I certainly am leaning more towards, allowing community groups and or private investors to take on the project. But I am also very interested in perhaps putting conditions on that so that it is actually returned to some condition that's usable for a lot of reasons, for the community, of course, and also they're connected to our water and sewer system as well, so it's sort of a customer that's left out there, and then we could share some of the costs there. But certainly I think the community has said that they'd like to see something happen with this school. The community, the district, and the county, and I'm still not sure what that looks like. So I'm happy to have a conversation today with council about that, and I'd just like to have some ideas of how we could do that, or if that's possible.
Like the Deputy Warden said, I would be open to having discussions on, looking at tenders and looking at investors. I mean, when you look at a lot of these schools, a lot of them in the province and in our area, some of them have been turned into apartments or low income and stuff like that, right? So I'd be open to discussions to make sure that this building is turned over to someone that's going to invest and make sure that it's used properly in the best interest of Richmond County.
The report does talk about there being pea stone gravel in the playground area, but my understanding is that there is glass content in the pea stone gravel, and I wouldn't want it to. Pea stone gravel's a great asset, right? And it's an expensive asset, so I just would want to be clear that the fact that there is pea stone gravel there wouldn't necessarily make it usable, user-friendly for uses such as playground or that type of thing. And would that be correct in saying that, do you think?
Yeah, it's worth noting that we're not actually maintaining the playground, so we can't say what condition it's in, and I would caution anyone to be wary of using it while it's not under the care of the municipality or not being maintained.
Okay, and that's great, because it does go on to say that the playground equipment itself is in pretty good condition, and fact is, though, that there is that no maintenance going on there, so it would be very risky to be using it.
Is there any way to reach out to them and just get a fundamental cost of up and running? They went over the gym floor, and they went over the again, if we were to bring it up to school specs. However, if we were just to bring it up to an open building, is there any way to, I'm sure we're not looking at $2.3 million to fix the glass, fix the heat, and open the building up just to operational.
Yeah, the report is not to bring it up to what it was as a school. They do note that in the report. Now, there's things that you may choose not to remediate or not to repair based on whatever the use of the building would be. But if we look at some of the key items, the mold remediation is estimated at $150,000, but they say it could swing largely in either direction depending on what a professional would find. Architectural exterior, the doors and windows, and some of the cladding is over $100,000. They're noting the roof replacement. One was 2021, the other was 2022. And skylight replacement at $475,000. Now, could that be deferred a year, 3 years? Possibly, but it's in the very near term. The interior architecture is almost $400,000. That includes the mold remediation of $150,000, and the remainder being, flooring replacements through much of the building, all of the ceiling tiles replaced, a good deal of painting because there's lead-containing paint in the building, so it has to be encapsulated. On the mechanical side, it's almost $550,000. There's one boiler that needs to be replaced immediately. The other boiler and the water heater are likely in need of replacement. They're well beyond end of life. Partial baseboard heaters are expected to be failed once they try and start up again because they've been drained for such a long period of time. Air handling unit replacements, fuel tank replacement, the pneumatic and control system for the heating, ductwork cleaning before you put it online. I mean, that'll be a substantial cost to do anything with the building. Electrical, they note a few items there, but I don't anticipate that being something that has to be done immediately. Life safety and fire suppression, the fire alarm panel, we were having issues with it a number of years ago, so I expect that has to be replaced. And then on the sprinkler system itself, where the building has been unheated for such a long time, there's likely going to be a number of leaks there. I mean, we have leaks in this building, and this building's not 20 years old, so there's likely a fair bit of cost there with the fire suppression system and also the plumbing. Once you pressurize the system again, you're likely to have a number of leaks that have to be repaired. So there's, even if you exclude things that you feel you can wait for, there's very substantial cost just to get that building to the point where you can occupy it.
It's been in our ownership since 2013. It's taken quite a long time for us to get here, longer than I think many of us would have liked. But there was issues right down to title, I believe, on the land that had to be settled, and so it wasn't. It was a complicated process to get it to where it's at today. So I've had some people approach me regarding use of the building for the purposes of housing, for the purposes of health-related or multi-purpose type things. I do think there's some potential there, but I think how it's up to us, it's up to council to decide how we want to proceed with any potential next steps. Deputy Warden, you mentioned potentially putting some conditions on the building. You know, and you've mentioned that some folks have reached out to you already about it. It is in your district, so I'm sure you're especially hearing about it. And I mean, you know, we can even decide if you know, we would like to have some kind of public consultation related to it as well. So our next steps are really up to us based on what we're hearing as a priority from our communities.
I recall that when we talked about this when we first started, it's 12 months ago, but I'm vaguely recalling that at the time, Dawn, you had mentioned that there are rules, right, in terms of when we have a property like this, we have to declare it surplus, and then we need, you know, that there are rules around the value that's placed on it, right? So could you just perhaps refresh us on that?
If it got to the point where we tendered it, we would solely be looking at a value. There would be no other determining factor to divest the property other than value. So if we tendered the property and declared it a surplus, tendered the property, and there were two bids, one was 50, one was 40, we would have to go with the bid of 50, no matter what the intent was for the proposals from each party. And that's, we're solely looking for best value, market value, which would be basically the best bid.
So that's what we've looked for in the past, or that's what we're required to look for? I guess what I'm asking is, I understand what you're saying, and I think that you had mentioned that at that time. But so I recognize that we've never done that before, sort of put conditions in terms of the bids, right? So if one was 20,000, but it was for affordable housing, and the other was 40,000, and it wasn't for affordable housing, but we wanted to support it, what you're saying is under the terms you're talking about, we'd have to accept the $40,000 bid. But we're also not able to sell the property to a group for $1 because they're doing affordable housing either, right? I think you've talked about that before.
Oh, no.
There is a section in our land sale policy that provides us an opportunity to for not-for-profit organizations to request these properties. However, I guess the problem there would be whether or not we would want to do that. And of course, with the huge deficiency in the building, it would be quite a task for any organization, even a for-profit organization, to undertake.
I understand that we can't do that for a private company. And then I guess the other piece of that is that we're also not allowed to put it up for tender but have conditions. Is that what you're saying? The rules of the tender process are that it has to be based on price alone.
I believe we received some legal advice that that's exactly what was included in the advice. We couldn't put attachments on it to restrict certain people, certain individuals or companies from purchasing the property. It was strictly based on the amount.
I feel that this is a pretty major asset for the county to be dealing with at this time. My thought process always when you've got something this major that perhaps we should be consulting in some kind of formalized way with community. I'm not sure that that's the right way to go in this case. I'd be happy to hear from councillors on your thoughts on that. I feel that given the work and the pressing priorities related to housing and related to healthcare professional recruitment, at the very least, perhaps we should be consulting with some of those groups, if not just with the public at large, to see if there might be some interest.
Low-income housing or some kind of housing to do with the healthcare sector would be great, but to be honest, it's going to be a pretty big price tag one way or another. I don't know that it'd be in our best interest to overcomplicate it and drag it out too long, only because the longer we do, likely that those numbers are only going to climb. One more winter, it's not going to get cheaper to fix anyway. So I would think the sooner the better to move on it.
I know there was a rapid housing initiative that was at 100% capital cost funded. So that's kind of sitting in the back of my brain. I don't know that that's going to be coming back down the pipe, but it might be something we also want to check with our MP, Mike Kellaway, about to see, what the status of that program is, because to your point, Councillor Brent Sampson, that's a huge price tag for any group, for our municipality, let alone for a nonprofit group, I can imagine.
I'd really like to see this turn into something that has to do with affordable housing or healthcare housing. And, there's definitely been conversations with the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health Committee, they're thinking about doing something, and it all might work out to the benefit. And at the end of the day, I hate to even suggest it, but it might be for a group like less expensive for them to actually demolish the property and start from scratch, but use the land that's there, and the fact that they have because that's one of the things they said in the report. One of the biggest benefits to this is that the groundwork is done, right? The water and sewer is brought up to the property. There's a lot of parts there that can be used and not require anything. So as much as I think there'd be people who'd be sad to see the building lost, we may find that that's what ends up happening to it.
I know we're all going around in the same circle here, but again, I don't know if there's a need for a public consultation here or public meetings just to discuss the situation with healthcare, with low-income housing, if there's any groups interested. Like the Deputy Warden said, if you can't put conditions on a tender, then we have the right to refuse the tender if it doesn't suit us, right? So I guess you could say in itself that might be a condition, right? So, I'd like to see, something happen to it. I mean, when you look at this engineering document, I mean, CMEL did a pretty good job, Chris. I mean, when you look at it, detailed. But the one thing that stands out to me, and of course these numbers are pretty big. They're huge numbers to put it back to where it's usable. But it also states in the report that the structural integrity of the building is in good shape and a good starting point for the repurpose of the building, right? And the replacement cost of this building is $6.4 million, right? So, you hate to see it go, but you'd like to see it used to the best that it could be used for Richmond, right?
We need to be making a really smart decision here, and not to say that emotion doesn't weigh into it a little bit, but we can't guide our decision making. It's got to be strategic.
When we first talked about this report, that facility condition index, that FCI, is not favorable. Like they say, it's fair, but it's 25%. And if you look at the chart, it talks about over time as you spend more. It doesn't get better. It gets worse. It just gets worse because there's more money to be spent versus what it costs to rebuild it from brand new.
Right.
And I think those are the pieces that I think anybody who's looking to purchase the property are going to look at.
Yeah.
And then really that will be to them to decide what they're going to do, whether they're going to repair what they have there or use it as part of whatever they're doing or not.
That's right. And, if we decide we want to put this out to tender, I mean, there's nothing, certainly that's information I would be taking back to the Housing Coalition and the, Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health and even potentially the new Community Foundation, Housing for Health fund that's just in its infancy right now. And they may choose to, any combination of those groups may choose to express their interest as well. And there certainly would be nothing stopping them from doing that. So it would be a good catalyst, I think, to your point about getting the ball rolling and not delaying.
I would like to possibly do the same, maybe reach out to some of the organizations to see if it's something that they may be interested in looking at. I wouldn't want to jump the gun tonight on put it up for bid or put it up for tender and find out that, again, we're losing a very large piece of our land and another municipal building that I guess just becomes unused or becomes personal property.
The fact that we're not absolutely locked into accepting any bid, I'd be prepared to make a motion to ask staff to put the building and property up for tender.
I agree that we should put it up for tender and move on this as soon as we can, but I'd also like to see some groups have a say as well, right, during the process.
I don't know if we want to take a step back and put it out to the communities or to the people first before we make that step for the tender, or do we just want to? I guess my only concern is that we put it out there and then we're not looking to accept it. We're more or less just looking to see what somebody else wants to pay for it.
Councillor Digdon, I understand where you're coming from in terms of, who's going to want to put in the time to gather up the numbers to give us a bid if they don't think we're going to accept it. But again, I think that as long as our request, specifically talks about the fact that we would like to know what their plan is, because I think that's going to be paramount to the decision making. Because if it's just about the number, then we're still not going to have any idea what we're deciding on. What, you know, if none of them look good to us, well, if they're just numbers, we can't tell if they look good to us. You know, maybe the name of the company might get, or the group might give us an indication, but we're going to need to have something in the proposal that's, again, not necessarily, that's not part of the decision making per se, but underlying it is. And I think that if people start, if anybody's bidding on this property, they know that they've likely checked in with someone to find out what our goal is here. Right? And I think we've made, as a council, we've all said the same thing. We would prefer to see affordable housing, something that's related to either, you know, health housing or health services / housing or whatever.
Right.
So I don't think we've hidden our agenda in terms of what we want to see happen there.
Certainly not, no.
No.
That's
So,
right.
although we can't say it directly we can't say we will make a decision based on that.
Yeah.
We can reject based on it not being what we're looking for.
It would be great to see a community group take it over, but I'm just looking at these costs. When you're looking 2.3 million in the next 5 years, I think if any of them can come up with that, then they'll probably be fine to put a tender in. You know what I mean? Like if they're not able to come up with the funding now in order to put a reasonable tender in, I think it's probably going to be really difficult to come up with 2.3 million over the next few years.
The document clearly states that we actually can't ask what somebody else is looking to do with that property. Our function as council is to, and to be frank, it just says more or less get the best bang for the buck.
Yeah.
It's not what, you know, whether somebody's putting in a bicycle shop or, you know, a Harley Davidson club isn't up to us to decide. And so again, I would just be cautious in making this motion tonight to put it out for tender. I think we, at the minimum, we should probably take a couple of weeks to send it out to the people that we think may be looking at, that may be able to run with it or take advantage of it, that we would like to see take over. Other than that, then by putting it up for tender, I think we're opening a can of worms if we try to look in, you know, again, we can't pick and choose what somebody else is going to do with the building, nor do we have the right to ask them.
The opinion from the solicitor essentially was if we put it out for tender or for quotations, it's for best price, and we shouldn't weigh any other criteria such as benefit to the community or any other criteria in that. And I would caution council against even asking what they plan on doing because it may taint their perception of the bids. And I will also add, as far as rejecting the tenders, if we tender it and we get bids that are at market or better, I'm not sure that council could choose not to accept it. So I think you should get a legal opinion if you think you may want to consider rejecting it if we're getting market value, just to make sure we don't get caught.
I do think that we need to take a bit of sober second thought on that. And then to me, we need to go to these groups and we need to ensure that there's no groups that are able and interested to do something with the property before we put it out to the highest bidder. I don't think that we want to drag that on a really long time, right? So I think that by doing some public consultation, by having those conversations, we can determine whether or not we're kind of holding this whole conversation truly for groups that don't have the means to do it, or you know what I mean, or have the ability to get the means to do it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they'll need to understand that we need to move forward, because I think we do need to have something happen with this property.
That whole idea about going out to the communities, I'm not even sure if we're able to do that. I think if we want to move in that direction, we should consult with our solicitor to see if that's something that we are able to do. If it does in fact create any kind of a liability on our part, if that does happen and we end up choosing someone that perhaps may want to pursue a project. So I just think we maybe a bit of legal advice on that would be appropriate.
I guess I wouldn't be opposed to getting any kind of legal opinion on that, but I mean the reality is that municipalities divest assets to community groups all the time, and that doesn't happen without consultation.
I don't think that there's anything in there that allows us to go ahead and consult with not-for-profits to. Chris, you can help me on that one. I don't think there's anything in there. They don't make reference to that at all. I think the group would have to approach us I just question on whether or not we, it's okay for us to approach groups.
In the end, councillors voted against putting the West Richmond Education Centre school building project to tender. So the next question at the special Richmond Council meeting became, what would happen next, and when would a final decision be made on tendering? The decision came with some words of warning from Warden Amanda Mumbercat.
I would really caution, though, on letting too much time elapse before we come back to this. I'm not trying to rush it unduly, but I think I can see nodding heads, so I think we're all on the same page about that. So I think maybe this would be our window of opportunity to let the community know that, and I mean, community does know this is a public meeting, that we're starting to discuss a tendering process, and should anyone wish to consult with us, we're open to doing so.
Personally, it's been sitting there for over how many years now? 7? I don't think 1 month or 1 month and a half is going to make or break the decision-making process.
Yeah,
but it will, make it fair for people out there.
And it is in line with the 6 weeks we were thinking of the tendering process, right? So from now till the 28th, you're looking at 6-7 weeks. I mean, that's not unreasonable.
And so the former school site in Evanston will be officially revisited at the regular council meeting on December the 20th. At the same time, Richmond County residents will be able to take a look at the building assessment review, as the entire document has been posted on the Richmond County Municipal website. The final words at this special council meeting went to Melanie Sampson, the deputy warden whose District 3 also takes in the Evanston area. Sampson urged her fellow councillors and residents to keep their eyes and ears open as this issue nears its closure in a month and a half.
It would be really useful for any
To
groups
link this.
who may be like hoping that we put it up for tender, or a community group or whatever that plans to, that they would see the condition of the building and the dollar value to get it to spec.
It would make sense to link this in the advertisement,
To wrap up Telile 24/7 this week, I'm going to introduce you to Michael Yellowlees. He's from Scotland, and he's been walking across Canada for the past 9 months, including walking across Cape Breton for the past 5 days, to raise awareness about the Scottish Highlands, specifically about clear-cutting in the Scottish Highlands and the need for reforestation, or as he puts it, rewilding. Michael and his dog Luna have been making their way through Cape Breton Island over the past week, and on Tuesday last week they were greeted by municipal leaders including Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, the mayor of Port Hawkesbury. So let's head to the Canso Canal right now and meet Michael Yellowlees and find out about his rewilding journey with his dog Luna. Sporting his traditional Sinclair tartan and with his Alaskan Husky Luna by his side, Michael Yellowlees crossed the Canso Causeway onto Cape Breton Island last week, where he was greeted by the mayor of nearby Port Hawkesbury.
Hi, Michael. I'm so glad that you are including Cape Breton Island in your trek across Canada. So I'd like to offer you an official welcome to Cape Breton Island, and also as well a welcome to Luna. And I wish you safe journey across the island and as you continue your trek across Canada.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for having us here. It's a delight to be here. It's amazing to see the Atlantic.
And I ordered this beautiful weather
you
just
did.
for
Good
your
job.
arrival.
Good on you.
I
Thank
did.
you.
I absolutely did.
After his official welcome from the mayor, Michael Yellowlees took a couple of moments to answer some questions from Telile 24/7. He told us at the Canso Causeway Swing Bridge that so far his arrival in Cape Breton is off to a very good start.
Absolutely fantastic. We've been blessed with a lovely period of weather, which is fantastic, so that's making things beautiful. Lovely warm welcome everywhere we go. The hospitality's been beautiful. And yeah, really delighted to be here now in Cape Breton and sort of smelling the sea air of the Atlantic. It's been a long road. We left the Pacific a little over 8 months ago.
That long road began in British Columbia back in March, which brought me to my next question. If you're looking to make a statement about clear cutting in Scotland, why do it by going across Canada?
Yeah, so there's a few different reasons for that, but the main part of the story is in the period that Scotland was deforested, if you like, the trees were removed, so were the people. So a lot of people of the Highlands in Scotland were removed from the lands and sent over to places here like Canada and Nova Scotia. So I'm sort of tying into the history of the landscape there. But another reason for it is that you have wilderness here that we've lost back in Scotland over the last few hundred years. So it's coming over here, getting an experience of that and taking that home with me. As well as that, it's almost reminding yourselves, what you have here is so beautiful. It's such a precious thing, so please look after it.
This is the first trip to Canada for Michael Yellowlees and for his Alaskan Husky, Luna, and they've enjoyed meeting Canada's animals as much as they've enjoyed meeting Canada's people.
Yeah, well, certainly, like I've said it throughout the trip, but the aspect of human kindness that I've received along the way, Canadians have been absolutely amazing, supporting both of us along the way. So that's been a huge lift and support along the way. But no, I've also had these beautiful experiences, of meeting wilderness, of encounters with bears, hearing wolves howling in the wild, so I've had really amazing experiences throughout.
Yes, you heard right. He likes the bears.
Yes, that's right enough. Yeah, plenty. Probably into the teens now, where we've met bears out in the wild and out walking, and so it's been a really amazing experience. Yeah.
Okay, but has he seen any moose yet?
I haven't as yet. No, I'm hoping to meet some down the road here. I think there's a few around, so hopefully I'll get a chance to meet some.
Wildlife encounters aside, Yellowlees is especially concerned about the trees that surround his forest friends. The Rewilding Journey is an official fundraiser for the Trees for Life campaign, which is designed for replanting and reforesting the Scottish Highlands. And Yellowlees is happy with the reception his tour has received in Canada, beginning with the March debut of his journey in British Columbia, a province known for many years for clear-cutting debates.
Meeting with people, it's something that people are coming on board with, and they're really understanding it. Also, as well, again with that heritage thing of Scotland, there's so many Canadians here who used to be Scots, if you like. So it's tying into that sort of ancestral thing as well, they're giving back to their homeland. But yeah, hopefully it is awakening things here of people going, okay, we do need to look after this. So we'll see.
Since he turned 32 during the course of his journey earlier this year, you might think that the anti-clear-cutting crusade launched by Yellowlees is based on more modern trends in Scottish forestry practices. Actually, it isn't. Yellowlees traces his research all the way back to a clearance of another kind that might resonate with a lot of people here in Cape Breton, whether or not they come from Scottish ancestry.
There's a whole different aspect of things. Like, one has been the sort of Highland period of the Highland clearances, where people were removed. There was the building of the British Empire, where a lot of Scottish timber was used for shipbuilding and building the British Empire. I was in Pictou the other day there and went down to visit the Hector, and I was really moved by it. I was it brought me to tears, if you like, because it was such a part that like so many people left. And yeah, I walk in the Highlands now, and again, this is how the whole dream of this walk came, is walking in the Highlands, and it's very barren, but not just in regards to its landscape, in regards to its trees, but also with its there's tumble down buildings that used to be communities, that used to be villages, that are no longer there, and they're all the people that left to come west, so it's really touching to be here. It's amazing to be here. Later on, there was then the Industrial Revolution, so things were really expanding industrially. We've then also had 2 world wars that we've had to deal with as well, so all that has contributed to the forests being removed in Scotland. But we're now at a point now where it's we're starting from ground zero, so we're really having to, the forests that we have left, we're having to really re-establish them and reconnect them. And yeah, hopefully with what we're doing this year, hopefully help that cause.
Despite this history of Scottish clear-cutting, Michael Yellowlees feels it's still not too late to make a difference, and that people don't need to walk across a country like he does to be able to make that difference.
Get out and do something. If you feel passionate about the environment, you feel passionate about the planet that we live on, I certainly do, go out and do something. If there's a local group that you can be involved with, get involved. This isn't just an issue in Scotland, it's not just an issue in Canada, this is a global issue, so go out there and get involved with the fight for it. I think we can make a lot of change, but we need to be attacking this issue now. We need to be doing stuff about this now, and also we need to get to a point. At the moment we're sort of like, okay, let's protect things. I think we actually need to be doing more than that. We need to be protecting what we have, but we need to be going past that and giving back as well. We need to be actively promoting giving back to our landscapes and our earth.
After making their way through Cape Breton Island last week, Michael and Luna, a rewilding journey, will wrap things up in Cape Spear within the coming days. Yellowlees is hoping to finish things off just before Christmas. But even though he's looking forward to getting off the road just before the snow flies, Michael Yellowlees isn't quite finished with his time in Canada yet.
I'm going to make a return trip next year, but driving, visit some of the people I've met along the way. Hopefully put on some shows there, both to talk about what's going on in Scotland, but also what's going on in Canada as well next year. So that's something I'd like to do. Probably heads back to Scotland next summer. But yeah, with the idea of, again, putting on some evenings, putting on some events to talk about my experience in Canada, but also, again, to talk about the environment and talk about reforestation in Scotland, rewilding in Scotland.
So, with the Trees for Life campaign still in his sights, even as history and climate change collide in this cultural journey through northeastern Nova Scotia and Cape Breton Island, Michael Yellowlees is hoping to protect one tree at a time, one step at a time, as he makes his way towards his endpoint in Newfoundland and Labrador. At the Canso Causeway for Telile 24/7, I'm Adam Cooke. And that wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a special thanks to Nick Boudreau and Becky Bourinot of Telile Community Television for filming and formatting the footage from the recent special meeting of Richmond Municipal Council. If you have any thoughts or comments about what you've seen over the past hour, or you'd just like to make some suggestions for future editions of Telile 24/7, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863. And you can email me using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also connect with Telile Community Television directly. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928. And the best email address to use is info@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And our YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, as well as our new program Roundtable and our sister French language series Notre Côté. I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you once again for joining me for Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now.